January 18th, Towamencin Government Study Meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. For opening comments, this meeting of the Government Study Commission is being provided via Zoom for the public unable to attend in person and who wish to view and hear the meeting live. The purpose of this study is to explore the ways home rule could change the outcome of the pending sewer sale, explore the ways home rule could add citizen participation through referenda, and explore the ways home rule could add transparency to Towamencin's operations. Public comments received by 6 p.m. the day of the meeting will be read during the agenda item they address or during the open public comment period. For those present, a public comment period will be available before each voting item. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes each. In addition, a public comment period will be available at the end of the agenda. And we ask that those comments be limited to 3 minutes as well. I would like to announce that our website is live at towamencingsc.org. And we are still looking for Towamencin residents to volunteer, either to help with our communications or to act as an alternate study commissioner. Please find our contact information on our website. Again, towamencingsc.org. And next on the agenda is the approval of the January 4th minutes. Would anyone like to make that motion? Speaking to my please.
I make motion. Second.
Motion and second. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Okay. And next on our agenda is an interview with David McMahon, a Norristown resident. Norristown is a borough with a home rule charter. David, if you want to come up to the microphone.
Is this on? Okay, good. All right. Good evening. My name is David McMahon. I am a Norristown resident. I was one of 4 people who co-founded NOPE back in the June of 2020 when the sale of our sewer system was first got underway in our town. And and once we founded that organization and won our campaign there, we understood that we needed to share the information and experiences that we learned in our efforts to help other towns get up to speed quickly and learn what was at stake for them to see if this was going to be something that they wanted to do, and if they needed the means to push back, we were going to help them get started with that campaign. And that's in that capacity I met Kofi, but we also reached out. We had contact with folks in Conshohocken, Schwentzville, Jenkintown was investigating it at the time that Norristown was. So yeah, it's been an interesting few years.
Thank you. And Norristown residents were able to force their council to reject the sewer sale using a provision in Norristown's home rule charter. Could you describe the events?
Yes. Once we understood that the public hearing process was basically a foregone conclusion and that the decision had effectively already been made, we had to figure out what means we had to turn it back. I had gotten in contact with a few organizations, including Food and Water Watch and the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, the Action Center on Racism and the Economy, and a number of people who shared information with us very quickly. It was the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund who pointed out to us that we had a home rule charter with a strong citizen provision in it, a very strong direct democracy provision in it, and that petition process was what we used to ultimately stop the sale. But I will say this took us over about 5 months, and it was through 3 different petition attempts that we finally were able to win. The first 2 trials, we did not succeed, but we kept at it, added more volunteers to our campaign, helped persuade the Norristown Municipal Water Authority that the public was going to back them up in opposing the sale, and they took a stronger public stance as a result of that. And ultimately, it was the move by the council to dissolve the sewer authority and take direct control of the sewer's assets that created the final ordinances that we used the home rule charter to overturn.
Yeah. And how did you find Norristown's transparency during your sale exploration?
It was terrible. You know, I had been going off and on to council meetings in the lead up to this, and the steps leading up to the sale were part of public meetings, but everything was very carefully couched in terminology to sort of keep, things like, exploratory, a vote to proceed here tonight is not a commitment to a sale, all these sorts of, very cautious terms. But really, when the time came that they accepted the final bid, the move to act and close on it was just going to be in a matter of, a couple of weeks. And those, the public hearings. So my frame of mind when I was in those other meetings where the ideas of selling the sale was first broached, it created the impression to me that there would ultimately be some real sort of like public airing, a real public back and forth and investigating of the sale. And in fact, what we got was literally a presentation primarily, and these are on YouTube. The hearings are on the Norristown website. They were the bulk of the meeting times were devoted to a presentation by Aqua Pennsylvania as the majority of that time. Again, we were fortunate that we ultimately were able to create our own circumstances to create further opportunities to petition, but it was really touch and go for a number of months. I would say, just to add to that, I would say, we made very clear requests of council and early on, real direct comparisons as to, the needs that were being used as the, well, I'm not going to say, well, I consider a pretext for a sale. We just pleaded for side-by-side cost comparisons. What, for the projects you want to do, the budgetary items you want to cover, what does it look like to finance that through ordinary processes like a municipal bond with low percentage rates versus what is going to be the impact on ratepayers by turning over the system to a private company and the increased rates? What does that look over a number of different time horizons, 20 years, 30 years, keeping in mind that the sale is permanent itself. So it's not really a loan, but in effect, this money that you're borrowing from a water company to do non-sewer work. What's a genuine side-by-side comparison look like? And we never got that.
I had a question. How many residents are in Norristown?
It's about 35,000.
That's just under twice, I guess, our size.
Mhm.
How many households?
Let me call up that. It's I have it saved here. Number of households in number of homes in Norristown, 14,432.
How many?
14,432 homes.
Okay. And how much were they offering you to purchase your sewer system?
82 million.
And
So once, anticipating your question, so once assets and municipal waste authority debt was purchased at about 30 million, there would be about 52 million left over to do the spending that Norristown wanted to do.
well, so there's a $29 million, was that debt for the sewer system?
That was some debt and whatever, value of certain assets and paying off debt of the authority. That left a 52 million left over from the proceeds to be spent.
Okay, now is Norristown in debt?
Norristown itself is not in debt. No.
Okay, so this pays off the sewer system debt. Are they having a problem with pensions paying? I mean, a lot of people let that go.
No, I mean, I'm looking at the budget from, if I look at the only municipal employee pension payments that I see over 2021, 2022, 2023 in their budgets, pension payments are, in tens of thousands, normal, not excessive. It was one of the things that they did feature in the presentation as, a need to, there is normal, again, these are all normal budgetary expenses of any town, all towns carry some debt load. There's always some debt servicing going on. There's always some pension, so it's ultimately the question is, how are we gonna, fairly fund these normal budgetary concerns that a town needs, and what's an equitable way to do that? And what is the most fiscally responsible way to do that for the long term?
Did they ever discuss what they wanted to do with that other $53 million?
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, not that they put numbers to them, but there was a whole laundry list. I would say, recreation center, municipal hall renovation, fire department consolidation, contributed to underfunded pension liabilities, scholarship endowment. And again, these are all normal things that a town might do. These are all normal concerns. And the question will be, what is the most cost-effective way for the residents or ratepayers or taxpayers to fund these projects?
Okay, thanks.
David, thanks for coming out tonight. I have just a couple questions. To stop the sewer, did you use the provision in your home rule to repeal an ordinance? Is that how you?
Yes, I would say the first attempt where we fell short, that was to repeal the ordinance that would set up the three-party deal between Norristown, Aqua, Pennsylvania, and the Norristown Municipal Waste Authority. We needed to collect, there's a formula in the charter. We needed to collect about, I think our number was 12,052 signatures, something like that. We didn't collect that in the first go round. What we did ultimately do, following up that, we then used the portion of our, the same article within our charter, which is a provision to create ordinances. So we were seeking to get on the ballot to create an ordinance that would stop the sale. That also fell short. But what was happening during that time, this is June, July, going into August, the sewer authority realized that there was a lot of opposition, public opposition to the sale, and it did encourage them to take a bolder public stance. And when they tabled for a month council's request to further the asset valuation process, council moved to dissolve the authority and take direct control of the sewer assets. And it required 2 ordinances to do that. And so there was that third round where we collected signatures for each one of those ordinances. So ultimately we collected over, we needed 1,252. We collected over 2,000 signatures for each ordinance, so over 4,000. over the whole campaign, we collected over 7,000 signatures, and I would just comment too, our council members get elected with, 200, 300, 400 votes.
Was the sewer in disrepair? Like, was it
No.
simply an exercise to get additional funds for the township?
Absolutely not. This was one of the most discouraging things about the whole process. And it's the same script that we see town by town. We have a very well-run facility. We have among the lowest rates in Pennsylvania. At the time that this sale was being investigated, the sewer authority was in an upgrade and modernization plan, the $10 million plan that didn't require a rate increase to pay because the efficiencies that would occur from the upgrades would pay for the cost of the loan. It's an extremely well-run facility. It has the capacity to take on new development. The collection system has the capacity there to take on new development. And it was simply not the crisis that was, the condition that was claimed was not actually true. And council members actually at that time had very little actual direct communication with the members of the board of the sewer authority to really find out for themselves. And it was one of the most disappointing parts of the whole process.
So since that sale did not go through, how has council responded to the needs of the township? Has rates increased for the sewer, tax increase? How have they addressed the plans that they had for that money?
Well, one of the things that did occur, the Norristown got 25 million for the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act money. So that was 25 million there. They just sort of found other, they just continued on with normal business, budgets have been pretty standard. There's no been, there may be a tax increase this year. As to the sewer authority, at the time that we were fighting the sale, the previous rate increase had been in 2017, and it had been 2.7%. We have a new increase going in effect in February of about 3%.
What's your rate now? You know?
I don't
It's okay.
I don't know offhand. It's pretty minimal. I don't pay that much monthly for my.
And then
So-
just one more question, sorry, specifically around home rule. Do you know of any other time when the charter has been used for any other issue to repeal an ordinance or propose an ordinance?
No, this has been the only
This is the only,
time that it had been used.
thank you.
Question, be a little frank, Norristown is one of the more financially distressed municipalities in Monco.
Mhm.
Why didn't you and your neighbors want the $82 million from Aqua?
Well, let me put it this way. If my home needs a roof, I don't sell my home to my contractor. I use the equity in my home to get a good rate to make the repairs myself. So everyone kind of realizes what it's going to mean for rate increases. We understand that it means we lose local control of a public asset. It means in some future times, it makes sense to gain some of the much vaunted, economies of scale. We wanted to combine sewer and stormwater processes. We would lose that option because we'd only have stormwater and not the sewer component of that. And the rates. And I'll tell you what, because Norristown, there's a lot of senior citizens, there are a lot of people who are struggling to make ends meet. Doubled sewer rates, in addition to just being straight up unnecessary inflationary, have a real impact, would have a real impact on many people in Norristown, and unnecessarily so. The whole this model where people understood very quickly you don't have a lot of time to explain the situation when you're not collecting signatures. So you have to explain, and people get very quickly the idea that we have a basic need that we have to provide for ourselves. We pull the resources of the community to build the infrastructure under public control and provide that service to us at cost. It's a very simple thing to understand. There's no need to insert another layer of profit takers or middlemen or anything like that to unnecessarily add to the cost without any benefit to this, to the service and to the residents and ratepayers.
And
I just want to say I would ad lib on that, maybe add to that just a little bit. In 4 instances in southeastern PA, in New Garden, Delcora, Willistown, I'm forgetting one, possibly Limerick. When Alco, Pennsylvania had to show that these sales were in the public interest and that there would be these savings from economies of scale and all these things as part of the PUC process, they could not do it. In 4 instances, the sales were found not in the public interest. And so there is no inevitable improvement in service by privatizing.
You had to do 3 petition periods to overturn this. How were you able to reach out to your neighbors?
I have to explain too, this was in June of 2020. The pandemic was only a couple months old. We didn't really understand what the disease was, exactly how to prevent catching it. And so the process was still pen and paper. So we got out there in public with pen and paper and collected over the course of 5 months over 7,000 signatures, person to person, one at a time. And we stood on street corners. We had signs. We flagged people down to pull in and sign. We had yard signs. We stood at shopping centers, and we just, just one signature at a time. Masks, sanitizer, pen and paper. And it was hard too to convince folks in Norristown because, again, like I say, this is the early stages of the pandemic. This was happening right at the point of the murder of George Floyd, and it was difficult to break through to people and say, "Look, this is for you a very important thing to be addressing at this moment in time too." And when we did, we were able to make that case ultimately.
And just a few quick questions about home rule. Were you involved at all in the 2004 rewrite of Norristown's charter?
No, I was not living in Norristown at that point.
And do you feel like Norristown residents are more engaged in local politics after the sewer cell ordeal?
I think so. It's hard to judge. It's certainly something that I do want to try to build on. I personally have much deeper ties, and I've heard, every signature came with a story. I learned the history of Norristown being a recent, having just recently moved there. I learned the history of Norristown very quickly. It remains to be seen, but I do think that there's a real opportunity to have used that moment to defend something about Norristown. And I think that there's still the opportunity there to decide what we are going to build with similar processes.
And last question for me. Are there any home rule powers that you'd like to see Norristown employ that it doesn't currently?
No, not at the moment. I mean, I know you all are looking for specific anti-privatization language. I feel a little more comfortable, and I do understand why you want to do that. I feel fine with where we are all in Norristown, having come through the fight on the positive end that we could do it again if we needed to. That is sort of like direct democracy component, of our citizen provision is strong, and we've shown that it can be used effectively. The structure, of our government, some people regret having a municipal administrator instead of a mayor, that's still kind of an open question that people have conversation about. But I think overall, it's a very strong charter.
Any other commissioner have a question for David?
I don't know if Dave can answer this was there a charter? So 2004 was a rewrite of an existing charter?
Yeah, so
Okay.
they had a charter that was adopted in, I think, 1986. And they had another home rule study before 2004 and they adopted a new one in 2004.
So there was a home rule study commission and did a study prior to 2004. Does that what you
Yeah,
said?
so
Okay.
they would have done one in the 80s and then did another one in the 2000s.
Yeah, the charter was adopted in 2004. I think, though, that the ordinance setting forward the process that you all are in now was in the previous year.
Anyone else have a question for David? Would anyone in the audience like to ask a question of our guest?
Hi, I'm Mike Main, Towamencin resident of Harleysville. Some of this you did touch on already. I have an article from the Times Herald published December 2nd, 2020 and updated September 23rd, 2021. In it, it states the two ordinances were 2014 and 2015, and each of them required 1,261 signatures, which you talked about. You got signatures of registered voter. We collected over 2,000 signatures for each one. It says McMahon told Media News Group. Above that is Ordinance 2015, essentially amended the asset purchase agreement to include the municipality of Norristown and Aqua, Pennsylvania, to contract. The contract had previously listed the Norristown Municipal Sewer Authority. Was this a signed asset purchase agreement, and had Aqua at the time made any payments to Norristown?
No, there wouldn't have been any payments. The valuation of the assets was still ongoing. It was the move by the authority to table the furthering of the assets that caused the council to move to dissolve them. And that's why there were two ordinances. The one ordinance was dissolve the sewer authority, which meant that the original asset purchase agreement had to be rewritten to just include two parties. So now, instead of Aqua Council and the Waste Authority, it would just be Council and Aqua.
Yes. So Towamencin has a signed asset purchase agreement. Next Era has made a payment. Do you know of any sewer sales that had a signed asset purchase agreement and that were voided with a newly formed home rule charter after the signing of the asset purchase agreement?
To my knowledge, I don't know of one. No.
Also, later in this article, it states, authorize the municipal administrator to take any and all actions necessary to resolve any litigation matters or remedy any other actions taken in accordance with Ordinance 2014. Solicitor Patrick Hitchens, an attorney at Kilkenny Law, called the item a housekeeping matter during Tuesday's virtual meeting. I believe it's a housekeeping matter because there was no asset purchase agreement in place. This is much different than our current situation. We have an asset purchase agreement that is already signed, good, better, and different. And it appears to me that this will not be a matter of housekeeping for Towamencin solicitors if Government Study Commission moves forward to draft a charter to cancel the contract with Next Era. Towamencin would be subject to lengthy, expensive lawsuits with little chance of success. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I would just want to comment, though, that the point, the takeaway from the Norristown fight is that rather than face a public vote, Aqua chose to walk away.
Would anyone else in the audience like to ask a question?
My name is Shannon Mee. I'm a Towamencin resident. I just have a couple of questions. I just don't know if I wrote down correctly for David. When the charter was formed for Norristown, do you know why that charter was formed originally?
It came on, well, there was a whole new slate of council members came through. There had been corruption trials, and that was part of the interest in creating a charter that didn't include a mayor. So I know I've learned some of that history, but I wasn't there at the time.
So there was known corruption when the home rule charter first took an effect. Is that correct?
Well, the charter was meant to be like a long-term remedy as a way to try to avoid future corruption. I think that's just from the folks, the history that I've kind of learned secondhand. That's my take on it.
And do you know what caused them to change the existing home rule charter in 2004, was it?
Not directly.
And then you mentioned about the current sewer system that Norristown had and the condition of it. Did you say it was in good condition or poor condition? Did it need repairs or did not need repairs?
It's in good repair. The upgrades have been completed. They have I mean, I have some numbers here if we get to that point as to what capacity they can still take on. You know, they've been, as far as I know, this is from my attendance at one of the meetings last October. They had a presentation as to you know, future capability of the system. But it's a very well-run system with low rates. They have ongoing monitoring of the collection system, the pipes, and like I say, they've just completed at the end of last year a upgrade to $10 to $12 million modernization and upgrade. You know, I know more about the sewer system than I ever thought I would.
Did you ever tour the sewer system or did anybody tour the sewer system?
Yeah, I met with the plant manager there for hours over the course of this. John Larson, he's the very effective manager.
So would you recommend for Towamencin that the commissioners tour the sewer system prior to making any recommendations about the sale of the sewer system?
You repeat the first part?
Would you recommend that the commissioners tour the current sewer system and all before they make recommendations on the sewer system?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think so, you know. Again, it's, you know, even with things, some of the progress being derailed by, you know, the flood from Hurricane Ida, you know, was a bit of a setback, but there, you know, again, like that was part of the modernization, elevating certain buildings, things like that. I'd recommend a tour of it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Would anyone else in the audience have any questions for David? Do any other commissioners have any more questions? Okay. Thank you, David.
Thanks,
Thank
David.
you.
Thank you.
And next on the agenda is the treasurer's report. Marty, could you get that?
Okay, so we have some new bills that came in. One is from the solicitor, Rudolph Clark. The date of the invoice is January the 10th this year. The amount is $2,856, and we need to approve that payment by the township.
Would anyone like to make the motion to approve that spending item?
Motion.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Any public comment on that spending item? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? None, motion carries.
Okay, the next one is the website. Now, this will be to complete 5 monthly payments. It's $21.94. So that total will come to $121.90, and we need to approve that.
Would like to make that motion? Okay.
Yeah, I'll motion to approve.
Second,
Any questions, comments, or concerns? Any public comments on that spending item? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Motion carries.
The last item here, Jen, did I send you a copy of the invoice for printing?
Not yet.
I meant to do that. Okay, then we'll just table.
We need to
this one.
approve it anyway.
Excuse me?
We need to approve it.
We
We'll
can
need to
it?
approve that.
Okay. So if we can have a motion,
Yeah,
What-
motion
what-
to approve.
What's the number first?
oh,
and what was it for?
$11.87.
What was it for?
Printing copies for the agenda and for the budget finances for our budget. And that was at the January 4th meeting, and then some additional things at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
I make a motion.
Second,
Tina, you second?
Yep.
Motion and second. Any public comments on that spending item? Any questions, comments, or concerns? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? None, motion carries. And was there anything else on?
That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Marty. Okay, next on the agenda is a motion to prepare a home rule charter. Mechanically, if this motion is approved, it will extend the maximum time of the study to 18 months. And in the context of this study, if this motion is approved, we will start talking about a draft charter in the next agenda item. Would anyone like to make a motion to prepare a home rule charter?
Motion.
I second.
Motion second. Any public comments on this?
My name is Richard Costello. I'm a Towamencin resident. And, pardon?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm making these comments tonight. I'm a relatively technically driven person, and so I have this and I guess for just saying facts are stubborn things. I know that, well, I got a letter a couple of days ago from the Government Study Committee, and it rather surprised me because the letter says that you were that the commission's purpose was to look at a home rule change specifically for the sewer sale. I went and looked up the text of the ballot initiative that created this, and it says, shall a government study commission of 7 members be elected to study the existing form of government of Towamencin, to consider the advisability of the adoption of a home rule charter, and if advisable, to draft and to recommend a home rule charter. I know that this group was created because of a single issue, but that's not what we voted for. We voted for a study of our government. Now, Towamencin has about a $9 million budget. And the sewer budget, capital and processing, is about 2 of that. So there's another 80% of the budget, this township, that needs to be addressed specifically if we're going to go to a home rule charter. And there are multiple departments that could be affected. There's the police department, the park department, public art, Fisher's Park. And I am particularly concerned about this initiative, this citizens initiative. And I understand why you want to do this for the sewer authority. But there are other constituencies that may decide that they don't like other aspects of our government and could decide that they don't want, that they want to repurpose the endowment that supports Fisher's Park. They could decide that they want to abolish our police department and let the state police manage the public safety in our department. All of those things are part and parcel of the way we govern. And my expectation of this committee is to do a comparison of all of the aspects of the budget of Towamencin Township and the departments that are in it, and how each of them would be affected by home rule versus what we're doing now. And if, and until that is at least public information, I don't see there's any utility in trying to create a home rule charter, because the people who are going to be expected to vote on that don't have any way of comparing home rule versus something else. And so that's what I would like to see, because that's what we voted for. Not an analysis, only the sewer. That's only one aspect of this entire thing. And I think it is incumbent upon this study commission to address the entire government of the Towamencin Township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
And,
you.
The one thing about this ballot initiative, that this commission is also elected, and I feel that the news and the campaigns were pretty fully covered, and that there were two slates that presented different ideas on how they wanted to do the study, and this is the commission that Towamencin elected.
So you're saying there will be a study that will be published that will compare what we have now with home rule? Is that what you're committing to?
Yes, but I'm also saying that how we do the study is how we were elected to do the study.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying, Kofi.
There were 14 people on the ballot to do this study, to serve on this commission.
Right.
And of the 14, there were two slates of 7 that presented different ideas of how to do the study. And this was the one that Towamencin voters chose.
Well, but Towamencin voted for the ballot initiative.
And the commission.
And in your first meeting, you redefined the ballot initiative to be about the sewer plant. And what I'm suggesting is that's not what we voted for. We want an analysis of all of Towamencin government under home rule and under the existing thing before we can make any intelligent vote about whether to adopt home rule.
Sure.
And the ballot initiative and the citizen power in home rule is going to be different than whatever we have now. And I think it behooves this committee to study that and make it very clear to the citizenry of Towamencin that the other $7 million of our tax money that's being rolled into this is going to be adequately administered, and also the departments that we have are going to be appropriately managed under home rule, just as they are now. And that's my expectation, because I don't think that you are empowered to unilaterally change the objective of the ballot initiative, which is what the letter, that's what surprised me about the letter I got. The ballot initiative says one thing and the letter says something very different. And I don't know where the authorization to do that came from.
Thank you.
Hmm?
Did we get a motion in a second? Go ahead.
No, I don't think we did.
My name is Chris Casmar, township resident. I actually brought up that very same point during the last supervisors meeting, and I totally agree with the last speaker. I know that during campaigning, there was obviously talk about the sewer system, but again, the ballot question is very clear. It's a comparison study. a government study, not just a study, but a government study. And specifically on the comparison and if advisable, to create a home rule charter. Actually, one of the things I wanted to say first is thanks for volunteering, and being concerned about our township. That's, very important. Now, so, I'm not an expert on this, but the little bit of internet searching that I've done on why a home rule is better or not better, pros and cons, is most of the things that I saw, they wanted to do the home rule charter to avoid limitations in increasing taxes. One case I remember was Newcastle, Pennsylvania, to overcome a tax deficiency. Now, I don't want to necessarily elect a home rule charter and then, it can subvert state limits on tax increases. I don't think we need that here. And so the next step is, I know it's no surprise that this home rule is being pushed for killing the sewer deal. Okay. But what I haven't heard so far is, okay, so in the analysis of the sewer deal, I believe we did a financial analysis. And I assume we had some lawyers look over the contract and verify that's correct. Now, as far as the financial analysis, it seems like it might be a little suspect. It was from a company called PFM. Okay, and they kind of specialize in this. And in one case, I read in a newspaper article that the Upper Pottsgrove Township, the deal they had with the financial consultants was it was $50,000 plus 1.5% of the sale price. Now that is suspect to me because it seems like the financial consultants get paid more if the sale goes through. Now, I'm not exactly sure if that's what we had in Towamencin Township. I unfortunately did not come to the meetings earlier on, but we at least did a financial analysis. So if this group of people, if you want to kill the sewer deal, I think you also have to then say, what was wrong with this financial analysis? Why was it incorrect? Are you doing your own financial analysis? Okay. And then, what was wrong with it? How is it, incorrect? Okay. The next thing is that, there's a contract, you get paid for the sewer deal. And then there's this concern that the PUC will not back us up as far as rate increases. Now we don't generate our own electricity in this township, right? We don't own the power poles, so we rely on the PUC to keep electricity fair. As far as I know, we don't own the natural gas pipelines that feed everybody's homes, so we rely on the PUC there. Cable, television, internet, we have utilities, and we rely on the PUC to keep that fair because it's a monopoly. Now, so why is it failing in the sewer deal? Why is this sewer deal bad? And I don't want to hear that, some other township decided it was bad or some other township had huge rate increases because we can't compare the deal. We don't know if they were very deficient to start with. They had a lot of repairs. They had, non-compliance issues. They're different deals. We can't just say that it went up here and it's going to happen here. They're different companies.
30 seconds, please.
So, I think that's.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment? Go ahead.
Evening, my name's Joe Meehan. I'm a Towamencin resident. And I would just like to say that the question that I see is exactly what the previous two speakers addressed. You, as the commissioners, are here to do a study on government, and if the sewer scale should drop out because of that, because of becoming a home rule charter, so be it. But for now, the thing that's right now is to do a study, tell the residents what what leads up to this change from the system of government that we have to the home rule charter. You all know that I'm in favor of the sale of the sewer system, so it's not a surprise to you. And like I said, if the sewer sale as a fallout from the home rule charter falls out, so be it. But what we want to know is we want to know what is the vision of the government 10 years for Towamencin. Said it before, I've said it again. I'm always in favor of doing the best. And I would like to know, I would like to see some hard evidence of what you can show that home rule charter government is going to be better for the residents, not today, tomorrow, or the next day, 10 years down the road. That's, you all know very much, I think, that I try to look ahead. I'm a planner. And I would like to see for not only myself, the person who's going to buy my house and become the resident, a future resident of Towamencin, what the government is going to be like for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a full comment?
My name is Nancy Becker and I'm a Towamencin resident. Towamencin Township has done many studies during the course of the time I've lived there. Currently, we're doing a sidewalk connectivity study. The township has been talking about it for over a year. The process started last summer. The first public meeting was in November. Additional meetings are in February, April, and June. Professionals are working on the study. If it takes this long to do a study about sidewalks and trails, how can you change our entire form of government in a few months? For this study that we're doing for sidewalks and trails, there's a survey that the residents can put in as to what they feel. Are you getting resident input? Do you have enough time to do that? You went from not doing any study to making a resolution to draft a home rule charter. I agree with the other speakers that the question on the ballot was to do a study and then find out if it was beneficial to go to home rule. Norristown did go to home rule in 2004, a new charter in 2004. The reason they did it was because of the ultimate corruption there. Their mayor went to jail, some of their council members were charged with theft and whatever. So they had to rewrite it. I don't see how you can compare Towamencin to a corrupt municipality. Towamencin is an amazing municipality. Changing our form of government is a huge undertaking. Are you really interested in the good of the township, or do you just want to stop the sewer sale? Your only focus seems to be on the sewer plant. If you just want to change the government to say that any sale of an asset has to be a referendum, hey, I'd be with you 100%. But I just don't see how you can make a motion tonight to draft a home rule charter when you have not done any studies about Towamencin existing government. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make a public comment on this agenda item?
I'm Shannon Main, speaking again, Towamencin resident. So Kofi, I know that you and I spent many hours together at the Falls of Bolton Farm. We talked personally about a lot of this stuff. So I know what your intention is with this whole home rule charter, because we probably were there together for about 5 hours talking about lots of things, including the fact that you knew that Don Lepp was going to drop out prior to election day that time. We did discuss that. So I want to be full transparent, and you guys just voted on extending and proposing the home rule charter. Kofi, I know we talked for 5 hours. You know everything. We both read the home rule handbook. Can you please explain what just happened with that vote? So if you weren't going to rewrite the charter, how many months do you have to do the study?
So it's up to 9 months to do the study.
Up to 9 months to do the study. So now that you guys all voted to rewrite the charter, what does that allow?
We haven't voted yet, to be clear. We're taking public comment on that. But
Okay, well-
if we do vote, it would be up to 18 months.
And so they then extend it and give you up to 18 months to complete the full study if you decide you're rewriting the charter,
Yes.
correct? Okay. Have any of you looked at the current sewer system right now? Have you toured the building? Like David said, he was spent hours and hours with the manager at Norristown to look at the sewer system. Have any of you done that?
We are working on scheduling that, yes.
You're working on scheduling that?
Mhm.
Okay. So then to come to my comment then, since it looks like you are going to prepare and propose to move forward with the home rule charter, I just find it a disservice to the community, just like everybody else is saying, that we are going to rush the study and move forward with drafting the charter after it being our second meeting. The process for the home rule charter, if you decide to rewrite the charter, extends you to allow up to 18 months. There is rationale for that amount of time. The move to home rule amounts to change to the local constitution. This is serious and complex and requires careful consideration and detail, including potentially hiring experts and other professionals to support an interview. I do know that you interviewed 2 people regarding sewer sales systems, but I think it would be advantageous for you guys to interview people or maybe bring in the PA Department of Community and Economic Development to discuss what an exact home rule charter will do for our township and what it means for the residents moving forward. It is also to my knowledge that once we do elect home rule charter, if it is elected on the ballot, no one can change that for a minimum of 5 years, and then somebody can take the initiative to change the charter again. Is that correct?
That's right.
So we're at least going to have this home rule charter for at least 5 years if it is elected.
Yes. And also, we can't do another government study, even if we vote against the charter for 5 years.
Okay, so members of this study have publicly stated that they are going to put on the ballot in 2023 primary, and I just feel this is an insufficient time frame for a serious study consideration without exploring the alternatives. The home rule charter has serious impact for all Towamencin residents, and if it's not studied thoroughly, I think it's irresponsible, especially since we just approved a budget for over $30,000. I think the study should be done adequately and take the entire amount of time frame to 18 months to do the study and evaluate everything. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to note, we do have someone from DCED scheduled for our next meeting. Would anyone else like to make a public comment on this agenda item?
I'm Vanessa Gaynor. I'm a Towamencin resident. If you don't mind me addressing the commission, did you select the ballot initiative question for to go on to for the election this past November? Did you specifically draft it to have those words?
No, that came from the home rule law, and the only thing we were allowed to select when collecting signatures was the amount of commissioners, 7, 9, or 11.
Okay, so regardless of whatever type of government study commission that a township or citizenry would like to perform, they all have the same language. So whether it's to get rid of mayors for corruption or to possibly, take care of privatization and outlaw that, everyone would have the same ballot question. It's not going to be specifically tailored to what those candidates or individuals who asked to put the ballot question on is. Everyone has that question. You had no choice in that. So perhaps that stating that purpose at the beginning is to help provide guidance and give purpose. And I do want to say that I really do appreciate and I am encouraged by the civic engagement that's going on. Clearly, this sewer sale is like a hot button, and It's brought out a lot of people who are involved in, who really want to have a say in the government and how our community runs. And I appreciate that. And I may not agree with everybody in the room or everyone in the township, but I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I think that having this public discourse is important. I do think that going forward with the draft of the home rule charter would allow all of us to take a look at it, because we'll have the chance to read it and see if it's actually going to 100% overhaul and everything's going to be so different. Or is it going to be specifically tailored to the needs of our residents who perhaps, if they vote for the home rule charter or do not approve of the sewer sale, perhaps they do agree with having citizen referendum. I mean, we talked about how there is a sidewalk study and how we're getting lots of resident input, and that's great. I just wish we would have had that for the sewer sale. And we would have been able to vote and see all those numbers, but we didn't. So perhaps that citizen referendum will allow our citizens and our neighbors to be more involved. So I am in support of moving forward the draft of the home rule charter. And I will read it. If I don't agree with it, I will vote against it. I campaigned for these individuals, but I've told them to their face that if I don't agree with the home rule charter, I'll vote against it. So I'm looking forward to reading the draft, and I hope that everybody will give it in November. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a public comment?
Yeah, hi. My name is Eric Gable. I live in Towamencin.
Sorry, could you repeat your name?
I'm sorry?
Could you repeat your name? I didn't.
My name is Eric Gable. So I want to take a step back, because what the question on the ballot was, shall the Government Study Commission of 7 members be elected to study the existing form of government of Towamencin Township to consider the advisability of adoption of a home rule charter, and if advisable, to draft and recommend the home rule charter. So I understand the drive is because of the sale of the sewer. I understand that. But that's not, getting back to the point, that's not what the question was that was put on the ballot that people went through. So you have to look at the entire package. You're cherry picking what you want to do with the home rule charter to specifically address an already existing and signed contract to try to get out of that, which is going to create a whole nother poop storm. But let's take the step back to what you were put on the board for and not go to a predisposed end. So that's where I'm really troubled. I'm all in favor of going through and doing the study. I'm all in favor of going through and looking at it. I appreciate you all sitting up there and taking your time to do this. I think that's great. And I'd be interested in reading it, but you're steering us down a path that is not what was the intent, at least from what was on the ballot question. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a public comment? Does anyone else want to go before Joe goes again?
Joe Mann, Towamencin resident. I would just like to get it clear in my mind. You're asking on this motion that's on the floor right now to extend it to 18 months. Okay, so, and I think, Kofi, when you were asked about how long it would take, you said up to 18 months.
Mm.
What about the other? In other words, what if you came back tomorrow and said, this is it? That fulfills the wording up to 18 months. What is the timeline that you propose to have a complete document that the public can look at and provide their input on?
So if we approve this motion, we will present a draft of the charter tonight, and we'll make it available to the public tonight, and we'll be taking input for the next few months. And if we do to actually put it on a ballot, that will be available to be read, as well as being mailed out to all the residents.
So it's already done at this point. Is that what you're saying? If you're going to make a motion?
Not done, but the focus of the study, if we approve this motion, would be to work on the actual language.
I don't think that's being very transparent about it. David said it, and I know you guys have said it all through the whole sewer sale process, that things were not being transparent. David said that in the sale of the Norristown sewer, the people in power. I think that's
Rich.
All the units of comparing that whole little charter versus this form of government that we have on every citizen in the county, there's no way of comparing this. And the issue is, you know, most of these records, as soon as they have created, 80% of the township department is on the record of that.
Would anyone else like to give a public comment?
Mike Mean again. I just want to know, who actually drafted the charter that you're about to propose?
I did.
Okay, you drafted a charter in just a couple of weeks from the onset of this. Then this is the charter that's going to rewrite how we govern our township.
If the rest of the commission votes to send this to the Board of Elections, yes.
Okay, so you wrote a charter for the township by yourself in a couple of weeks that you're about to propose for everybody to vote on and to move forward with. And you decided that the whole commission decided in what's it been, 3 weeks? That you did a study after interviewing 2 people publicly and took a couple of public comments. That we need to draft a new charter, and this charter is already written that you wrote in 2 weeks by yourself.
Yes.
Thank you. I think that says it all.
Would anyone else like to give anyone new like to give a public comment? Yeah, Vanessa has gone already. Go ahead.
Vanessa Gaynor, I spoke earlier. Is this the final charter that will be sent to the Board of Elections for the residents to vote on?
No, we would need another motion to send it to the Board of Elections.
Okay, is that motion scheduled today?
It is not.
Okay, is there a planned date at which the final charter would be sent to the Board of Elections?
As of now, the thinking would be March 1st, the same day of our public hearing.
Okay, so today is, so that's like a month and a half. So this is not the final charter and we have a month and a half to continue discussions.
Yes.
Okay, and then I'm clarifying. I appreciate not being laughed at. And then the citizens get to vote on this charter. Is that correct? Like you don't get to unilaterally place this on the residents.
Right. If we choose to put it on the ballot, the residents ultimately are the final decision makers.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
First of all, the ballot question clearly stated you were going to do a study and a comparison. Usually when you do a study and a comparison, you do a matrix, one versus the other, before you make a final decision. You bypass the entire study and you wrote a charter. Sophie, where is your expertise at writing home rule charters? Have you done it before? Can you say you are an expert at writing a home rule charter? And does the citizens of Towamencin deserve anything but an expert to draft a home rule charter?
The commission is an elected office. I'm writing the charter because Towamencin's voters chose me to write the charter.
The Towamencin voted to do a study and a comparison and then a proposal. You've totally disregarded the study and the comparison, and you're running right to home rule charter. And I find that irresponsible. And I hope the citizens of Towamencin Township will see that this has nothing to do with government. It has everything to do with the sewer plant sale. And to change our form of government, which has been good, we are one of the better townships in Montgomery County because of one issue written by someone who has never done it before. I just find it unbelievable.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to give a public comment? Go ahead.
Bruce Bailey, resident of township for 2 years. When I moved here, I heard about the sewer sale and got hepped up about it. I like the comment from the gentleman from Norristown who said, if I need a roof on my house, I'm not going to sell my house to the contractor and rent it back from him. I stood here before and offered the supervisors to buy this building from them, from the township, and rent it back to the township at rent deemed acceptable to me. And that is stupid. Most of the people all the people I talked to that came out to vote, and I did some canvassing in the neighborhoods. I stood in the parking lot, collected citizens. I stayed at the poll all day while the voters came up, discussed the topic of the sewer sale. What I saw is that the citizens voted on whether or not they wanted the sale. The ballot question is written up in legalese about a government study. But the whole purpose of this whole gig here is to stop the sale of the sewer. It has to go through this process. That's a process. It's a good process. The citizens get to vote again on whether or not they like what is presented on the next ballot. That's the checks and balances of the process. I stand behind the committee. They've worked very hard. They're very aware of the topic, probably more than anybody else in the room here. And I support them. And I think there's just a lot of naysayers in here right now. It's good to stand up and speak your mind. That's what I'm doing now. Thank you for serving us.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a public comment on this agenda item? Seeing none, would any of the commissioners have any questions, comments, or concern? We had a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays or abstentions? None. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a report on the charter draft. Nirel, did you get my email with the PDF? Did you pull it up? Thank you. As I said during the public comment, I did draft this charter. It is heavily influenced by the Horsham Township Charter. Horsham is a township of the second class, just like Towamencin, but they have a home rule charter. They have a 5-member council at large, which is similar to Towamencin's current government. The preamble. We, the people of Towamencin Township in Montgomery County, under the authority granted by the Constitution and laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to adopt home rule charters, do hereby ordain and adopt this home rule charter to establish a council manager form of government with full rights of local self-government. We do so primarily to reaffirm our right to public ownership of water as given to us in Article 1, Section 27 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Article 1, name, boundaries, definitions, and powers sets up the construction of this charter. Section 101 is the name. We're going to retain the name Towamencin Township. 102 is the boundaries. The boundaries of the township would stay the same. 103 are some definitions that will be used later in this charter. It defines systems for potable water, wastewater, and stormwater. Section 104 defines the powers in general terms. It's similar to the language in Article 9, Section 2 of the Pennsylvania Constitution. The township can do anything unless otherwise prohibited by the U.S. Constitution, the Pennsylvania Constitution, the General Assembly, or the Charter itself. 105 says that the township would keep any powers it currently has unless otherwise stated in the Charter. Section 106 is the section I'm most proud about in this draft. It makes sure by default, Towamencin should act as a township of the second class. If any of you are familiar with computer programming, I'd like to think of this as an object-oriented approach to charter drafting. We currently have a functional charter in the Class 2 Township Code. No need to reinvent the wheel. This also makes sure that we don't miss anything since our primary goal has a timeline. From talking with people and from public comment, the consensus in the town seems to be that we like the constraints of being a Class 2 township, and I don't think it would be appropriate to write a radical charter during this government study. Section 1 is the construction. It has similar language to the Home Rule Enabling Law. Basically, if anything in this charter is ambiguous, the township should be favored. Article 2 is a bit boring. This charter keeps all the same elected offices in the second class code, 5 at-large supervisors, 3 elected auditors, tax collector, and if the General Assembly changes Class 2 offices, Towamencin would change too. So the section is one that usually gets a lot of attention in government studies. We saw in Plymouth, they had a award system unique to their charter. Norristown got rid of their mayor's office. A lot of charters get rid of the elected tax collector and elected auditor offices. One of the current concerns I've heard is that this charter might be an attempt at some sort of soft coup. I wanted to be clear that's not the case. Just to note procedurally, in case some other municipalities considering a government study or Towamencin does another one in the near future, even if this section changed some of the elected offices, current elected officials would serve out their terms. And just one comment on term limits, the Home Rule Charter Handbook recommends respecting the current political culture of the municipality. And I think Towamencin is actually very good at removing incumbents. Supervisor Wilson, Supervisor Marino, Supervisor Snyder, and former Supervisor Litley all challenged and beat incumbents. I'm confident that challengers can beat incumbents in this town, and personally don't think there's a need to debate term limits in this study. Article 3 explicitly retains financial procedures and tax limits. With our first goal, I do not feel we have sufficient time to look into this, but I included this section in case Towamencin wanted to look into different financial procedures with the amendment process. The lack of tax limits was a big thing I've heard against the concept of home rule, and I heard it tonight in public comment, so there it is. But I'd like to give some of the arguments. Most home rule municipalities, especially ones who've adopted a charter in recent years, are financially distressed. Removing this limit is deemed necessary to some, and distressed municipalities can actually be mandated to have a government study commission election. Some municipalities aren't necessarily distressed, but felt that increasing the earned income tax past the limits was a better fit to their residents than a property tax hike. And the last reason I've seen to remove the limit is to enact more modern tax levies. Allentown's property taxes are split rate. That is to say, the tax levied on the land itself is significant, whereas normal property taxes are almost exclusively levied on the valuation of the building. The idea is that land value is increased with infrastructure spending and therefore should be taxed. Some would argue this type of tax would better encourage development on empty plots compared to tax abatements, or at the very least, ensure speculators aren't sitting on undeveloped land without paying much in taxes. Pat Toomey, our recently retired senator, advocated for this tax levy when he was chairman of the Allentown Government Study Commission. I personally think it's a neat tax levy, but I do not think it is the intent of this commission to enable experimental taxes and we'll leave that to its own discussion if the Towamencin in the near future wants to explore it. And, could you go back up to Article 4? And Article 4 is what I would perceive as this commission's raison d'etre, the right to public ownership of water systems. Section 401 prohibits the sale of water, wastewater, and stormwater systems. Prohibition by a governmental authority is a no-fault event of termination in the sewer sale contract. The right to home rule is given to us by our state constitution. I'm of the opinion that any judgment that ends with Nexera getting the sewer system or receiving compensation would indicate a constitutional crisis. But I'm not a lawyer. Mike, do you want to give your opinion? Could you speak into that?
We have been provided with a copy of the draft that's being presented this evening. Ultimately, any challenge will end up in the Pennsylvania courts and they'll have the final say. But we believe this has a strong chance of withstanding a challenge and preventing the township from selling its public sanitary sewer system to Nexera or another non-governmental entity.
Thank you. Neil, could you pull that back up, please? And I've been told multiple times that our sewer system is in great shape, but I could imagine some situations where a total ban on sales or leases could be a problem. I left the option of selling to another governmental entity open in case public regionalization is an option we want to take. And Section 402 allows for short-term leases. That way we can approach private industry if we need to, but they would be subject to free market forces at contract renewal. And could you go to the next page, please? Article 5 is intentionally left blank. Our other two goals of the study are to increase citizens' participation and transparency. And those are a little less clear to me. So I'd like to have some more discussions about that before writing any provisions for Article 5 or writing another article. And Article 6 is mostly boilerplate. Section 601 is to make sure the township continues without issue. All decision-making we've had will be the same unless it violates this charter. Section 602 says that courts can remove sections of our charter. The most common charter provision that gets severed is recall procedures. A very big case in Philadelphia ended up deeming recalls as unconstitutional in Pennsylvania. There was actually a recall attempt in Towamencin over the bridge to nowhere, so there's some local precedents. Section 603 is about amendments. Currently, state laws require amendments to either be initiated through ordinance or by a petition of 10% of electors. In either case, the amendment would need to go to ballot. And finally, the effective date of this charter would be July 1st, assuming this commission elects to put a charter on the May primary ballot, enough time to certify the results, but soon enough to beat the PUC process in my estimation. If the sewer sale were to close, this charter couldn't even conceivably do anything about it. And this draft will be available sometime tomorrow.
I had a quick comment on something that you just mentioned there. So the big focus on the reason why everything is pushed towards the sewer is because we are under the timeline. There's a deadline for us to have an effect.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Could you repeat your message?
Yeah,
the
yeah.
mic?
So the reason why there's such a focus on the sewer aspect is because there is a timeline for this charter to be effective.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of the public comment tonight has felt a rush towards other aspects of this charter, which you've addressed in here that says can be amended or be updated by the amendment process.
That's right.
So if there is strong concern about the rush here, then it seems like that you would want to go to the Board of Supervisors and ask them to table the sewer until a full process can be done. That's a possible way to address the issue that people are concerned. I see some head shaking. I'm not entirely sure.
The sewer sale process is out of the township's hands right now. It's under the PUC right
Okay, fair enough.
This part of the agenda is discussion on charter provisions. Does any of the other commissioners have questions, comments, or suggestions for a possible charter?
Yeah, I have a couple of things to go through. So I was looking at both the existing Towamencin ordinances, the specific acts from the General Assembly and the Norristown and Horsham Charter. And what I would like to see is a similar provision in here around ordinances, specifically around the creation, the advertising of ordinances, the ensuring that they are posted. I know they are on the township website now, but we want to make sure that those are put there on a timely basis and accessible by the public. So Norristown has actually, and we have it on our website if anyone wants to look at it, we have Norristown's charter and their ordinance provision is actually really nice. And it's in line with Act 69, which is the General Assembly Act. The other thing I was looking at is the citizen participation provision, which is also part of Norristown's current home rule charter. So I'd like to see something similar there around allowing for a referendum to propose or appeal ordinances. I think Norristown actually laid that out pretty nicely. Horsham is very similar, so not much difference. And then third provision is around transparency in government. I was looking at both Towamencin's website, as well as I looked at Norristown's website, Horsham's website, several others. I think from a transparency perspective, it would be good to see more information around committees and the members of the committees, the terms of those members of the committee, digitizing an application to become a member of a committee. Planning Commission as well. I know I looked very much in depth at Act 247 around Planning Commission and comprehensive plans and ensuring that those are reviewed every 10 years. So I don't know if we can put something in a transparency and government provision around ensuring that comp plans are reviewed on a 10-year basis and made public. And I see that you already included the existing second-class tax limits. So those were my recommendations.
Do any of the other commissioners have comments or suggestions?
My comment is that we still have 2 other meetings where we will be having charter discussions. This is not final by any means. This is a point of start, correct? This is not a final analysis.
Yeah, that's right. With the kind of construction of this charter, tying most of the powers to Class 2, the intent was to keep a lot of the stuff about Towamencin very similar. And over the next few months, we'll get input on how Towamencin residents would like the participation provisions to be in this charter. Sorry, could you go to the mic, please?
Okay, you're saying it's gonna
And
take,
your name and resident status, please.
it's Janice Brown. We're entering into a home rule charter.
No, we
And you're
are,
telling me 18 months?
so any charter that we might present to voters would have to be approved by Towamencin. So we wouldn't be a home rule municipality unless Towamencin voters approve it.
What did you just say?
We wouldn't have a home rule charter unless Towamencin voters approve it.
Okay, so we're not entering into a home charter.
No.
Okay, because I didn't, these things that I were getting in the mail, it's gonna make everything go up higher for us. Oh, and they keep saying, it's only about 78 people, 78 that are governed by home rule.
Sure.
And I'm not for home rule.
So I just presented a potential draft of the charter, and that charter keeps the same tax limits. So any tax increase that we would be able to do under that charter is the same that they could do under the current Class 2 code. And as far as I think the statistic is about 80 out of the 2,000 or so municipalities in Pennsylvania have a home rule charter that accounts for about 40% of the population in Pennsylvania.
I'm reading here, everything is going to go up, the taxes, local taxes, less checks and balances, take away our voice in local government, force taxpayers to foot the bill for a study and implement.
You're reading a political piece of mailer that somebody is countering or putting out. That's
Yeah, but
not
this,
necessarily
these are people
true.
that we voted for too.
Yep,
Okay,
that's the
and
counter
they,
group.
and you're indicating that it's 78 are governed by rule and 1% is not. But I'm just concerned about entering into a home rule charter.
Mhm.
I'm not for it.
Okay.
Sure. And I just
And
presented.
you're just saying it is 18 months. I know you're working with this sewer and everything, and you're talking about 18 months. That's like round the corner.
Yeah. So I just presented a draft of the charter, and it does retain our tax limits. If you otherwise do not agree with the charter, you are entitled to vote against it if we present it to voters.
No, I don't want to enter into a home rule charter, period.
So you'll be able to vote against it, ma'am. If the draft that Kofi just showed up on screen, if that gets approved to go up to a vote, then you will have the opportunity to vote against it because you don't want the home rule charter. But if your biggest concern is that you think the taxes are going to go up, what Kofi was saying is that our charter has no impact on that. They remain the same. It's up to the Board of Supervisors to raise those taxes. That has nothing to do with our charter. Despite what is written on those two pieces of mailer that you have there, that is not the case. The legal document that Kofi just presented specifically states that we do not raise those limits.
Ma'am, if I may add, the documents you are looking at are from the during the election process, and they are not accurate.
Regardless, you still have the opportunity to vote against it. Nobody's forcing it on you. You can vote against it.
Any of the commissioners have any other comments on this draft? Okay, we can move on to the next item in the agenda, which is some expanded responses to the last meeting's public comment. I think it's important for elected officials to engage the public, especially in an office like this, where we only really have the power of recommendation. Upon review of the last meeting, there were a few public comments that I don't think were addressed adequately. Just to clarify on Plymouth's council composition, Plymouth has one at-large council member and 4 in wards, and that composition is unique to their charter. Typically, Class 1 townships are either all in wards or all at large. and the conditions for this hybrid council are rare. To compare, Hatfield is a township of the first class that has 5 commissioners and wards. Upper Gwinnett is a township of the first class that has 5 commissioners at large. Mike Main and myself had questions to Chris Monero on PFM. PFM has 3 stages to these explorations. First one is an overview on how the proceedings would go. Second one is a request for bids and some analysis. Third is the closing of an approved sale. I reached out to Chris and he clarified that Plymouth made their decision not to sell in stage 1 with just the knowledge of their current rates, the utility company's current rates, and the likely sales price. They did not get the same type of projections as Towamencin did in stage 2. Now that the Board of Supervisors voted to sell, Towamencin is currently in stage 3. If we were to start stage 1 today, Towamencin's current rates are $450 a year. American Water's current rates are $1,280 a year, and Aqua's current rates are $930 a year. As far as my opinion on PFM's ability to analyze these projections, those 2 actuals are a higher number than Aqua and American Water's submitted 10-year 10 projections. American Water is a particularly egregious $400 a year per household error. That's about $4 million a year system-wide. I do not understand how elected officials are confident making decisions with information this poor. And I will also note that PFM will receive about $800,000 if the sale closes, nothing additional if the sale doesn't close. Joe Meehan, Nancy Becker, Joe Silverman, and Kristen Warner made some reference about Towamencin's need to spend on infrastructure. First, on the sewer system itself. Part of the PUC rate setting process is determining how much the utility company needs to spend to upgrade the system. In all scenarios, sell, lease, or keep, ratepayers will pay the full cost of sewer system upgrades. The supposed argument for selling is that the utility companies are more efficient than public authorities, but I've talked to Mark Luca at Aqua, I've talked to Andrea Williams at NextEra, I've talked to Ben Jones at Bucks County Water and Sewer, I've talked to our supervisors who voted to sell. I've asked every single one of them, how do the utility companies save ratepayers money? And no one has given me a sufficient answer. Nancy Becker and Joe Silverman talked about leaking pipes in the 80s. That was fixed by a public authority, or at the very least, the contracting was directed by a public authority. I'm not of the opinion that it is appropriate to assume private industry would necessarily have handled that incident better. England privatized all of their water and wastewater systems in the 1980s. The investor-owned utility companies are currently dumping raw sewage into their rivers, and their legislature is unwilling to enforce stricter regulations on that behavior. On the non-sewer infrastructure upgrades, I think it's best to assume that NextEra will make their money back. Whenever I ask the same people reference, if the utility companies make their money back through these acquisitions, they again defer to this PUC's rate setting process. I talked earlier about American Water's $1,280 a year sewer rates. NextEra does not have the same cost saving measures as American Water. They have no in-state staff, they have no water customers, they have no connections to local contractors. I and many of the people I've talked to do not believe their submitted projections used in our sale analysis. And I believe local governments need to be much more careful with what it means to fund projects with windfalls, either monetization or grants. There's a decent chance I'll be in Towamencin 50 years from now. If we take this windfall, build a new fire station, accelerate our road paving, build bathrooms at all our parks, build a nice skating rink, etc. 50 years from now, all of that will need major maintenance, and I will get to be the old man yelling at the 2073 budget workshops. I'm of the opinion that local governments should get over their hang up on taxes and raise them slightly every year to deal with pending infrastructure life cycles. Windfalls are necessarily a liability to future residents, and we can see that with the bridge to nowhere. If you go back and look at the minutes, the supervisors at the time were making the argument that the bridge was good because of grant money to widen 40-foot road. We currently pay $1 million a year and change on debt service because of that, and we'll be looking at major repairs in the next few decades. If we took $115 million as a loan, the debt service would be north of $8 million a year, according to the township. We are likely to see that at least that $8 million a year in sewer rates if this sale closes. that $8 million would be after the cost of maintaining the system. The cited township need in the analysis comes out to about $3 million a year, some of which were just tax cuts. Losing $8 million a year for $3 million a year in benefits doesn't seem like a good approach to funding infrastructure projects to me. Kristen Warner commented about the permanence of any change to home rule. After 5 years, we're allowed to hold another government study commission to repeal any charter that might be adopted or draft another charter. The amendment process would always be available to Towamencin, and any change would be as permanent as Towamencin's voters want it to be. Nancy Becker and Kristen Warner commented something suggesting that the study wasn't being done properly. The home rule law is very broad, and there are very few things that are required for either the government study or a proposed charter. One of the requirements to even start the study was to have voters approve the ballot question and elect 7 commissioners to direct the study. There were 14 candidates on the Government Study Commission ballot with 2 slates of 7 with fairly distinct visions on how to approach a government study. Both slates ran full campaigns. The local news covered the election very well. The major political parties gave recommendations for the election. The government study election had at least as much information out there as anything else on the November ballot, and voters made their decision. I believe their will should be respected, and personally, as an elected official, I have no intention to renege on my campaign promises. And I will open the floor to the open public comment period when anyone else would like to make a public comment. Go ahead, Joe. Do you mind letting Joe go first since you gave some comments on it?
Joe Silverman, resident over half a century in the township, attended most of the meetings. This picture is 2020. That's me. It's not the same exact shirt. Looks very similar, doesn't it? Yeah. But I've been attuned to what's happening. I don't have too much complaint about what's happened over the years, 50 years that I've been here, over 50 years. But this one decision is irrational. Numerous people attended the dock meetings, the 2 township meetings, and the will of the people was don't sell the system. I can remember 2 people, I won't mention their names. One of them was here tonight, who said, yeah, it's a great idea. And in small towns and part of the country, in New Hampshire and so forth, I've read that years ago, they'd have a town hall meeting and they'd have a vote. People would raise their hands. You had 500 people, and that's how it should be. You put your foot in this whole thing. The supervisors made a foolish decision. They didn't base it on what the people wanted. If they had done that, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't have to go spend all this time, all this money, and all this effort of the volunteers, I'm included, but these folks here have done most of it, Kofi especially. Does that make sense? No. When the people say they don't want it, you vote. We don't want it. 4 out of the 5 supervisors voted for this foolishly. You created your own problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
What is the time limits to prepare the final draft to be voted on? You have 18 months to complete it. However, if you want this charter on the ballot in May, when is the final draft to be completed? The amendments for the residents to review.
The last day we could make any changes if we send a charter to the county would be March 16th.
March 16th, so that's 60 days before the election?
Yeah.
So this is the draft. You're going to make amendments to this, like you said, and then that'll be proposed 60 days before the election. The residents will have 60 days, and us is to educate all of the residents on what the draft will be. You'll have 60 days to make a decision, and then it'll be election day. That doesn't seem, and that's a minimum. That's the minimum requirement by law for the home rule charter. That doesn't have to be the case. Many places that passed the home rule charter took a lot of the 18 months, and there was a lot of conversation after the final draft. It is just a requirement by law, if it is amended, that 60 days before the final 60 days before the election, the final draft has to be, and then we would only have 60 days to review what the final draft would be. It is a bare minimum requirement, and that is most likely what's going to happen here. We're not going to have the proper amount of time to discuss a final draft, to educate the citizens on a final draft, review it. People are going to be going out there and voting pretty much like they did for the Government Study Commission, not knowing what the real issue is they're voting on. You know, there was a lot of confusion around the last election. There'll be a lot of confusion around this one.
Yeah. Would anyone else like to give a public comment?
Lisa Lieb, I've been in Towamencin now for 16 years. So,
Could you repeat your name, please?
Lisa Lieb. My question with your proposal and with the whole sewers issue that's been going on, a lot of focus was on the rates that we're going to be increasing. What does your charter say about the rates? Because are they in the chapter 2 charter for our Towamencin? How does that stop the rates from going up?
So currently our sewer system is ran by the Towamencin Municipal Authority.
Mhm.
And under the Municipal Authorities Act, they are entitled to raise the rates to do any system repairs. And at least I am of the opinion that rates under the Municipal Authorities Act are cheaper than rates under the PUC with investor-owned utilities.
Okay, so your charter doesn't address that at all.
So as written now, it would force the township to continue to run the system as a municipal authority.
Okay.
Would anyone else like to give a public comment?
Evening again. Joe Mann, Towamencin resident, 50 years. I just want to say, I noticed your comment there, Kofi, in the response to the comments about that were made 2 weeks ago. I guess.
Can you come closer to the mic?
Oh,
Thank you.
okay. I noticed in your comments there, you referred to the old man. I assume you meant me.
No, I was talking about myself. Good.
Well,
in the future, I'd be though.
I thought, what? Well, yeah, Joe, it was either me or Joe Silverman. But I took it to be me. That's why I walked to here instead of going all the way up there, because I'm not an old man, and I don't consider myself an old man. I doubt. So, but at any rate, I just want to say that, thank you for tonight.
Any other public comment?
Bruce Bailey, citizen of the USA for 76 years, proud of it. Professional engineer, still have my registration in Pennsylvania. Graduated from Drexel with Joe. We started at the same time. We never met each other until I moved here. And I met him at a rally. Yep. The timeline is established by the supervisors who voted to sell the sewer. That set the timeline. These gentlemen and ladies up here, because of the voter interest of not selling the sewer, have set up the timeline to defeat the sale. That's why in 60 days, they have to have this ready to put on the ballot. The next election is this June, and that's when the voters get to vote up or down, just like you voted up or down on the sale, up or down on the president of the US. Okay, so don't blow any smoke on this. Focus on the task at hand. I've run many projects for government and private corporations in my career. They've got a task to do. You focus on the timeline. ignore the naysayers, get the technical details right, and get the job done. Thanks.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to give a public comment? Seeing none. And we had one public comment emailed. This was from Mike Stanton, a Towamencin resident. My wife and I have been residents and taxpayers of Towamencin Township since March 2001. Thank you to the commission for your efforts on this assessment. Can you please provide more details and line of sight into the overall project timeline? Specifically, I would like to understand the timeframe for the government study results compared to the timeline for the home rule charter draft, and how the results of the government study will inform the draft of the home rule charter. Additionally, we received our mailing on these meetings yesterday, January 17th, after the meeting had occurred and with very little notice to reset our schedule for today. I appreciate the mailing and would like to stress the need for consistent, timely communications to the public in multiple communication channels beyond social media as this moves forward. I do want to apologize for not being able to send the first mailing a little earlier, but we did need to approve the funds for that mailing at our last meeting. We have another mailing budgeted in the event that we present a home rule charter to Towamencin voters, and that would be sent with plenty of notice ahead of the election. As far as our schedule, with our first goal of the study being to affect the outcome of the pending sewer sale, we are under the impression that a charter presented in the May 2023 primary would have the best chance of achieving that goal, and the schedule was crafted with that in mind. We did present a draft charter today that has an anti-wastewater privatization provision, and the remainder of our study will be focused on the transparency and participation provisions. Those have not been written yet and will definitely be influenced by the study and resident feedback. We did put our schedule in the newspaper notices, and the township has been putting the meeting times on their website. But as a tip, just for anyone who wants to stay updated on government notice,